Hi everyone, Fran here from the 5 Minute Modeler, and today we're going to get into the meat of two of my operations on the mud run, as I mentioned in the previous episode. If you missed that episode, here's a link to it. It will help to better understand what we're talking about today. To quickly refresh, last episode we had a train leave from Hewitt Yard and proceed to Leroy. It pulled 6 empty hopper cars. The manifest indicated that we were to pick up 5 cars at the Leroy American Aggregates siding. In Manton, we watched the leased locomotive push cars loaded with gravel to the Leroy siding to wait for the Grand Trunk train to switch out the cars. Having made the switch, we're going to explore the movement and loading of cars at American Aggregates stone crusher and sorter facility. And as the gravel extra left, it needed to proceed to Big Rapids before it could return to Grand Rapids. We'll explain that a bit later. The design of the American Aggregates operation attempted to emulate the Grand Trunk's operation at the Oxford, Michigan American Aggregate facility, and historically was switched by the operators of the Gravel Extra, or the Mud Run as it was often referred. It sits on the inside of the curve on one of 2 peninsulas on the layout. Space allocated for this industry didn't really allow for prototypical switching operations, so I selectively compressed the operation, making this a branch line between Leroy and Manton. There are no other industries along this line. Here we have the train from the previous episode coming into the facility. We see there is a switch with the 2 tracks. These 2 tracks lead to and through the sorting and loading facility. Essentially, sand, gravel, and rocks are excavated from the pits, conveyed to the crushers, sorted by size, then stored in various compartments by size for loading to rail cars or dump trucks. As the engine heads towards the sorter, it actually runs through the sorter first with its string of cars. It pauses for each car to be loaded. After the first car is loaded, it is pulled out of the sorter, full of its load of gravel, and the engine and car proceed to the end of a spur to clear a switch. On this side of the sorter, there are 2 tracks that move through it. The engine will then push the car onto the next track, making sure it clears the switch. The engineer then backs up on the spur, switches the switch, then moves forward to get the next car. It repeats this process until all cars are loaded and pushed onto the secondary track. At that point, the train is ready to be pushed up to Leroy. American Aggregates will then contact the Grand Trunk dispatchers, let them know that they have a load to go, and then Grand Trunk will schedule it appropriately. A quick comment on this. From an operator's end, as they pull each empty car through the sorter, they will manually place a gravel load insert into the car before moving down the spur. These inserts are typically the coal loads that usually come with hoppers, removed from the car, modified to fit lower in the car, and then painted a gray gravel color. Once the cars reach their final destination, usually off layout, the inserts are removed and placed back in a small pocket on the fascia for easy retrieval. The second question I get is why the engine pulls 1 car at a time instead of pulling all cars and pushing them back up. I mentioned earlier that space was at a premium. To create a more interesting operating experience, I joined both tracks with the switch, but only had room to add track for an engine and one car. I've thought about extending it beyond the backdrop, and I might do that someday, but for now, this works, and it gives operators a bit more of a challenge. If you have any questions about this operation here, please let me know in the comments below. The other big question is, why does the mud run need to run up to Big Rapids? Well, there are two reasons. The run back to Grand Rapids is pretty long, and the railroad rules prohibit engineers from pushing trains in reverse more than a mile. In Big Rapids, there is a fairly long siding, about 20 cars long, so the first reason is that the train must reverse direction, which requires the engine pulling into the siding, uncoupling and proceeding past the end of the siding, and reversing back onto the main line. Once the engine passes the south switch, it backs up to the train and connects to the caboose. The caboose is moved onto the main line, then the engine picks up the hopper cars, pulls them out of the siding, and pushes them back to couple onto the caboose. At this point, the entire train pulls forward, but the crew needs to hear if they have clearance from the dispatcher, as there is a fair bit of traffic on this line between freights to and from Petoskey and the Northern Arrow passenger trains, which all have priority. Today, the crew hears that they need to back into the siding and wait as the dispatcher has advised of a southbound train. It's the Northern Arrow, the passenger train, which means their trip to Grand Rapids will be even slower because the passenger train will likely be stopping at all, if not most stations. Typically, when this happens, the crew will head over to Big Rapids for a bite to eat, then wait till they get the all clear. In the end, this is why this train takes the entire day to switch one industry. Here we see the mud run entering Hewart Yard to finish its run. The yard switcher will break the train up and move the cars to the appropriate tracks for future delivery. The crew will run their engine back to the engine service facility where it will be refueled and the crew will end their day. So that takes care of the operations of the Mud Run Extra. I hope you enjoyed it. This can be run with 1 or 2 operators on each train, though typically there's only 1 per train. Well, thanks for watching the episode and would love to hear your comments or questions.